Today, we're going to a real island of dolls that won't search horror movies. There's no film here. This isn't a movie set. Fear has never been so real. It's not the fruit from the tree branches, it's the dolls dangling horribly. There's a very strange incident behind the scenes of this bizarre event that's rare in the history of the world. Human beings have always experienced the feeling of fear since the first day they began to exist on Earth. The person who met the Earth first recognized the place, then met the animals as a result of the discoveries. The first feeling one gets is actually fear. Faced with fear, humanity has not been able to overcome this feeling even after millions of years. Today, we are on an island that will scare people. This is perhaps the scariest island in the world, Isla de las Muñecas, located in Mexico City. There is no one who visits here and is not afraid. We call this place the Island of Dolls. We don't know what you're gonna say. The island is surrounded by water canals. On almost every tree on the island, terrifying-looking dolls hang. If someone had made a wish, they'd have tied rags to these trees. But they hang dolls in these trees, instead of rags. The water canals give the island an even more macabre look. It looks like an alligator will appear through the water canals at any moment. The curse here allegedly began years ago when a girl on the island drowned in one of the water canals. That girl, who was playing games like every child, fell into a water canal as a result of carelessness. No one was with her when she fell into the canal. No one could save the girl, and unfortunately her tiny body was buried in the waters. The girl child drowned to death. The man who couldn't save the girl who fell into the water canal was a monk. His name is Julian Santana Barrera. The man blamed himself for a long time. If he had been nearby, the girl would be alive now. But for this mistake made, it's no use complaining nowadays. She's not alive. The man experienced unending anger and remorse when the girl drowned, just as he did today. But his regret was of no use to him, and to top it off, it had another bad effect. The monk, who lived on the island, began to experience strange events. One day he realized that the soul of a girl drowned in the river was haunting him. He heard strange noises all around, and even in the daytime, the girl could see silhouettes. The guy was literally living through nightmare days. Believing that it was the spirit of the girl who drowned in the river, the man came up with a plan to get away from the nightmares and the spirit that haunted him. Having experienced great fear, the man, with the experience of his monk life, decided to hang old dolls on all the trees on the island in order to drive away the spirit of the girl. The man collected as many dolls as he could find from the surrounding area. He went to shops selling old toys, rummaged through the garbage of individual houses and collected dozens, hundreds of dolls. Some of the dolls didn't have arms and eyes. According to another claim, the day after the monk brought these dolls to the island, he found a doll in a water canal that was not going anywhere despite the current. He also took the doll out of the water and put it next to the others. The monk was literally living a nightmare. He started hanging all the dolls in the trees as planned. The monk believed that when he hung all the babies on the trees, the spirit of the little girl who drowned in the water canal would no longer haunt him. It's been a few weeks. The monks hanging dolls from the trees on the island spread to the environment. Everyone was trying to figure out what was going on in curiosity. After the girl who drowned in the water canal a short time ago, dozens of dolls were hanging on the trees around. The monk went to the people around and explained the situation one by one. He said he hung a doll in the trees to honor the spirit of the little girl who drowned in the water canal and to keep the island from evil spirits. Some of the people who heard this thought the monk was going crazy. The monk, on the other hand, believing that the girl's soul would stay away from him, began to hang more dolls on all the trees on the island. There was almost no tree on the island that did not have a doll hanging from it. Most of the dolls didn't have heads or legs or arms. First the monk's relatives, then the people around, then the whole island, and in a few years, millions of people have heard about it. Thousands of people have flocked to see trees filled with dolls and the mysterious island. Thousands of people who enjoyed watching horror movies actually had a nightmare when they arrived at Isla de las Muñecas, the island known as Baby Island. Because the island was neither as it was described nor as they had imagined. From the moment they set foot on the island, it could be seen that thousands of dolls that froze people's blood and gave them goosebumps were somehow hung and attached to trees. I mean, this place wasn't even like the average movie scene. This island, which was visited in fear for several years, then began to attract the attention of tourists. Thousands of tourists have come to this island from Japan, Turkey, Arabia, America. Everyone wanted to see both the dolls and the monk. After this incident, which allegedly happened towards the end of the 1950s, some of those who came to the island as tourists also began to have nightmares. They said the little girl's spirit haunted them too. How convincing is this? The decision is yours. The monk has started to become invisible on the island, which is flooded with tourists especially in the summer months. He's overwhelmed with people's boring questions and attention. After the 1960s, the monk has never left his house in the summers anymore. The monk, who left behind all the years the girl drowned in the river had her soul haunted, complained now that people were haunting her. The monk was growing vegetables and fruits in the large garden of his house on the one hand, and continuing his quiet life on the other. One of the smart tourists who visited the island devised a clever plan to see him. He bought a suitcase full of dolls before he came to the island. He approached the monk's house and said that he wanted to give the monk a doll as a gift. Although the monk looked coldly at this gesture at first, he fell under the spell of the dolls and invited the tourist to his garden. The tourist gave all the dolls he had to the monk and had the chance to chat with him for a few minutes. The locals of the island were very surprised by this situation. They were amazed at the behavior of the monk, who hadn't taken anyone in for years, who didn't even go out in the summer. The monk told the first tourist who came to his house, "The little girl's soul is still here. That's why I don't lift babies. They move their heads and whisper something to each other. It's very scary, but I'm used to it," he said. The tourist who learned the decades-old secret left the house with a smile on his face and walked away from the island amid the curious glances and questions of all the people. Unfortunately, the tourist made the mistake of explaining the secret of the destruction of the walls of the monk, which were not destroyed. He said that he went home with a huge suitcase with dozens of dolls in it, gave the dolls to the monk as a gift. The secret soon spread to the island and then to thousands of people. Of course, the monk's house is again filled with hundreds of presented as a gift dolls. Everyone wanted to visit his house. Another strange aspect of this incident is that the monk drowned in one of the water canals in 2001, just like the girl. The grave of Santana, who died in 2001, is also located on the island.
Who is Albert Fish, the real Hannibal, the serial killer who inspired the Silence of the Lambs? How did Hannibal choose his victims? Why did he torture them before killing them? What happened in the process that turned him into a monster? Why did he commit his murders? Today, we tell the life story of Albert Fish, one of the most notorious and murderous serial killers in history, and look deep into his sick mind. Some called him a werewolf, some a cannibal, some the Brooklyn vampire. the most ruthless and notorious serial killer in history, Albert Fish. His notoriety terrorized America in the early 1900s. Even years after his death, the depths of his sick mind could not be unraveled. However, if we look at his life story, the suffering and negativity he experienced along the way, which turned him into a cruel and inhuman monster, contained many clues to his sick soul. Believed to have committed over 100 murders, Fish is also known as the oldest serial killer. The pain he inflicted on his victims, his cannibalism, and his sick soul have given him a sordid reputation all over the world. And of course, the film Silence of the Lambs, starring Anthony Hopkins, adapted from the novel of the same name by author Thomas Harris. Filmed in 1991, The Silence of the Lambs not only made a huge impact around the world, but was also nominated for 7 Oscars in '92. The film told the story of Hannibal Lecter, a serial killer who became a cannibal while working as a psychiatrist and attempted to delve into the depths of Hannibal's sick mind. The impact of the film and curiosity about the real Hannibal led to the recollection of Albert Fish, the murderer who created a real horror in America in the 1800s. Hannibal, Albert Fish's mental disorder dates back to his childhood. In 1870, Albert Fish lost his father when he was only 5 years old and was placed in a children's home as an orphan. Fish, who stayed there for 2 years, was unable to adapt to the institution and mental disorders began to appear. Life continued to be cruel for Albert Fish, who returned to live with his mother after a period in a children's home. After being sexually abused, he complained constantly of severe headaches. Little did anyone know at the time that the foundations had been laid for a mental disorder that would turn him into a ruthless monster. In 1882, Hannibal's homosexual tendencies began to emerge. He had already committed his first illegal acts. These minor offenses were nothing compared to the atrocities he would commit in the years to come. Albert Fish, who did not have a healthy family life as a child, married in 1898 and had 6 children. But he still could not find the family happiness he was looking for. His wife left him and ran off with another man. After that, Albert Fish kept changing addresses. He slept with other women. He sexually abused hundreds of children wherever he went. He killed some of them. Albert Fish committed his first known murder in 1910 at the age of 40. This murder was the first link in a chain of events that would lead him to become the world's oldest serial killer. Albert Fish's interest in various heresies increased after the age of 40. At the same time, he began to show an apparent inclination towards religion. One of his greatest dreams was to become a priest. He believed that his suffering and murders were in the name of religion. After his first murder, he quickly became one of the world's most ruthless serial killers. He is thought to have committed around 15 murders over a period of just 10 years. This sick man didn't just kill his victims, he tortured them excruciatingly. He sexually abused them and even ate their flesh. Albert Fish also argued that he committed all his atrocities and murders in the name of religion. What Hannibal did not only to his victims, but also to himself, was unimaginable. He tortured himself as excruciatingly as he tortured his victims. Beating oneself with a spiked stick, drinking one's own urine, sticking needles in the groin were just a few of the heinous tortures. Albert Fish believed that these tortures were punishment for his sins. He also saw his victims as sacrifices to God. Moreover, his victims were often small and defenseless children. Fishin, which had become one of every parent's worst nightmares in America, was killing more and more children every day. The event that doomed Hannibal took place in 1928. Fish spent time gaining the trust of a family. Then he kidnapped the family's little girl on the pretext of taking her to his nephew's birthday party. Of course, this hideous serial killer had no intention of taking the little girl to a party. Albert Fish took the little girl to an empty house and began to carry out his murderous plan. He killed her and cut up her body. Albert Fish took some parts of the little girl's lifeless body to the boarding house where he was staying and did not leave his room for 9 days. During this time, the murderous man cooked and ate the remains of the little girl's body and masturbated. After this brutal incident, Albert Fish began to flee, but his cruelty continued unabated. He continued to hurt the girl's family. He wrote them letters telling them how he had killed their daughter, how he had eaten the remains of her body. The letter he sent contained disgusting statements such as, "It took me 9 days to eat your whole body," but he said he had not raped her. Although these letters continued to hurt the little girl's family, they also provided the most important clues to catch the murderer. In fact, this escape lasted 6 years. A policeman called William King managed to catch Albert Fish, one of the most notorious serial killers in history. At the end of the trial, which lasted almost a year, Albert Fish was declared insane. But this did not mean that his crimes would go unpunished. He was sentenced to death by electrocution. Hannibal's reaction to the verdict once again revealed his sick state of mind. Albert Fish said after the verdict was announced that he would be happy to experience a pleasure he had never known. Albert Fish, 65 years old, was sentenced to death on 16th of January 1936. On the day of his execution, after the electric chair short-circuited, Albert Fish was X-rayed and found to have 29 needles in his body. The revelation of this truth did not delay the death sentence, and Albert Fish was executed by electrocution the same day in New York's Sing Sing prison. But although a century has passed, his actions are still remembered. Can a human being do these things? We look forward to hearing your comments. See you in the next video.